Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is the review video for sessions 3 and 4, where we're going to talk about the legislative, the judicial, and the executive branches of government again, just to do a quick review. Make sure that you watch this video before you move on to the video for session 5. So, for this video, you should have the fill in the blanks worksheet for 3 and 4 in front of you, and I'm going to show you what that should look like. It looks like this. So this is what you should have in front of you. It is, once again, 2 pages long. So you're going to follow along with that during this video, and that will help you to review all of that material learned here. So the first thing up in this review that I want us to talk about, we have a picture here that summarizes what each of the 3 branches of government does. And I have that all blacked out because I want us to go through it one by one, okay? So we first talked about the legislative branch and what that does. And so the legislative branch makes laws, it approves presidential appointments. There are 2 senators from each state in the legislative branch, and then the number of congressmen is based on a state's population. Okay? We also then talked about the judicial branch, and we talked about how the role of the judicial branch is to decide if laws are constitutional or not. Everyone in the judicial branch is appointed by the president. There are 9 justices on the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court can overturn rulings by other judges because the Supreme Court's decision are final. And then finally, in the last video, we talked about the executive branch and how the executive branch has the president who signs laws, he vetoes laws, he can also pardon people, he appoints federal judges, and then the president is elected for 4-year terms. Okay? So these 3 branches together, the legislative, executive, and judicial, they work together to create the American system of democracy. And so I want us now to take out session 3 and 4 homework that you should have completed. And I want us to review the writing portions together. And so I'm going to first turn on my big camera. There we are. And so you can see I did the homework with you guys. And you can see this is session 3 homework. I wrote out the sentences all nice and neat so that you can read them all and so that the interviewer could read the sentence. And then this was session 4. I did the same thing. This is the first page, and then I assigned 8, so here are the other 3, okay? So make sure when you do it that yours are nice and neat like mine so that you can read every single thing that you have written, okay? Because the interviewer needs to be able to read what you have written as well, okay? All right, so back to little camera. So I want us to go over some of the sentences that I had you guys write. So there were 5 sentences in session 3 and 8 in session 4. And so now I want us to read some of those sentences together, okay? So I've put some sentences that I had you guys write on the screen. I'm going to read the sentence and I want you guys to repeat after me, okay? So I'll say, our government is divided into 3 branches. And now I want you guys to repeat. Sentence 2. The House and Senate are parts of Congress. Your turn. Sentence 3. The president is elected every 4 years. Sentence 4. The president lives in the White House. And sentence 5. The governor of Iowa is Kim Reynolds. All right, so just make sure that when you're doing your homework, you write it out loud and you're practicing speaking it as well, because we want you guys to get better practicing in English so that you can pass that reading portion of the test as well, okay? And so now with that homework review out of the way, we're going to move on to what we learned in session 3, which means it's time for me to turn my camera off so that we can focus on just the material that's on the page. All right, so in front of you now, you should have the pages that say fill in the blanks worksheet 3 and 4 for session 3 and 4 review. I showed that to you earlier, okay? I'm going to go through the information and you should follow along with the paper, filling in the blanks as we go. So, the first thing we talked about in session 3 was the legislative branch, which is section A on your fill in the blanks worksheet. We learned how the legislative branch is made up of two parts, the Senate and the House of Representatives. There are 435 voting members of the House of Representatives and 100 senators. Each state elects 2 senators. The leader of the Senate is the vice president. Their job is to break ties. And finally, we learned that representatives are divided based on population. And based on the state's population, Iowa has 4 representatives. The next thing we talked about in session 3 was the judicial branch, which is section B of your worksheet. So the judicial branch is composed of the Supreme Court and other federal courts. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the country and is the final judge on cases involving the Constitution. The 9 justices of the Supreme Court must be appointed by the President and approved by the Senate. So that covers everything that we learned in session 3. And so we're now going to move on to session 4. And so the first thing we talked about in session 4 was the executive branch, which is section C on your fill in the blanks worksheet. The president is in charge of the executive branch and is also the commander in chief of the military. The president is elected for 4 years. Election day is always in November. We talked about the presidential line of succession and what happens if the president can no longer serve. I used the famous example of President Kennedy being replaced by his Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson. If the president can no longer serve, the next in line is the Vice President and then the Speaker of the House. The president has the important job of deciding what bills passed by Congress become laws. The president can either sign or veto bills. If he signs, the bills become law, and if he vetoes, the bill does not become a law. We then talked a little bit about the cabinet, which is section D on your worksheet. We talked about how the role of the cabinet is to advise the president on a variety of different topics. We also talked about how the cabinet is made up of the heads of 15 different federal departments. 2 of these heads, 2 cabinet positions, are the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense. There are more options, but I find those 2 the easiest to remember. And finally, we ended session 4 with a little bit about state government, which is section E on your worksheet. We talked about how states have their own government and their own constitutions. And while the president is the leader of the country, a governor is the leader of the state. Kim Reynolds is the governor of Iowa. She made history by being the first female governor in Iowa's history. The governor of any state works in the state's capital. The state capital of Iowa is Des Moines. And this right here, this is a picture of the state capitol building. This is where the governor works. This is where the state legislator meets as well. Okay. All right, so now let's take a look at the questions in each section, and I'll give you guys some time to fill in the blanks and the answers if you haven't already as we were going along. So first up, we have section A. Question 1. The legislative branch is made up of two parts, the blank and the blank. Question 2. Each state elects blank senators. Question 3. The leader of the Senate is the blank. Their job is to break ties. Question 4. Representatives are divided based on population. Iowa has blank representatives. Okay. Now we move on to section B. Question 1. The judicial branch is composed of the Supreme Court and other blank. Number 2. The Supreme Court is the final judge of cases involving the blank. And question 3. The 9 justices of the Supreme Court must be appointed by the blank and approved by the blank. Section C. The blank is in charge of the executive branch and is also the commander-in-chief of the blank. Question 2. The president is elected for blank years. Election day is always in blank. Question 3. If the president can no longer serve, the next in line is the blank, and then the blank. And question 4. The president can either blank or blank bills. Section D. The role of the cabinet is to blank the president. And question 2. Two cabinet positions are blank and blank. And finally, we have section E. Number 1, blank is the governor of Iowa. And question 2, the capital of Iowa is blank. All right, so now let's go over the answers to the fill in the blank worksheet to make sure that you know the answers and you're prepared to move on to session 5. All right, so section A, question 1 asks, the legislative branch is made up of two parts, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Number 2, each state elects 2 senators. Number 3, the leader of the Senate is the vice president. And number 4, Iowa has 4 representatives. Section B, the judicial branch is composed of the Supreme Court and other federal courts. Question 2, the Supreme Court is the final judge of cases involving the Constitution. Question 3. The 9 justices of the Supreme Court must be appointed by the President and approved by the Senate. Section C. The President is in charge of the executive branch and is also the Commander in Chief of the military. Number 2. The President is elected for 4 years. Election day is always in November. Number 3, if the president can no longer serve, the next in line is the vice president and then the Speaker of the House. And number 4, if the president can either sign or veto bills. Section D, the role of the cabinet is to advise the president. And question 2, two cabinet positions are the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense. Those were the two that I said, but any of the 16 positions are completely correct. And finally, Section E. Kim Reynolds is the governor of Iowa. And the capital of Iowa is Des Moines. So these are the correct answers, and you want to make sure that you have your blanks filled in with these proper answers because they will help you study for the test and make sure that you are prepared. Okay? Well, all right. That's the end of the review video. So once you feel confident with the information in sessions 3 and 4, and you have completed this video, go ahead and move on to session 5. But don't move on to session 5 until you're confident because I'm just going to keep going through the material and there's a lot of material still left to cover, okay? So if you feel like you need to take a break, review the sessions again, that's fine. You have the time. Go through them, watch them again. When you're confident with sessions 3 and 4 and everything that came before it, then go ahead and move on into session 5, okay? So thanks for watching, and I hope I'll see you all soon in the video for session number 5.